Hey guys, in this video we're going to learn the basic concept of how to create your tone first and then set your input and output volumes. So what we have here on the screen is the same TW basic rig that I built a few videos ago, but now we're actually going to dissect the tone and also adjust the input and output settings so we have the optimum sound and overall volume for our rig. Now if you notice on the main knob right here, I usually have mine between 7 to 8 or 9, just somewhere in there, depending on how loud the front of house guy or your recording interface needs to receive your input signal. But before we figure out what our overall volume needs to be, let's listen to the tone of this rig and see if we want to make it cleaner, dirtier, what we need to do to it. Alright, so I'm going to put this on the bridge pickup of my Eastman T59V, and let's just hear what kind of sound that we have. Okay, I can see on my recording interface and the DAW that it probably needs to come up a little bit. So let's go ahead and make it between 8 and 9. Okay, pretty good. Now, since this is a TW basic rig, I'm going to say this is a little dirty for my taste. So what we're going to do is double tap on the amp, and we're going to go ahead and bring down the instrument and the microphone volumes here. So let's listen to it now. Okay, now what that did was it did bring down the volume of the overall amp, but it also brought down the volume of the rig, and that's where we can go into the output and we can make up for the loss of volume that we got by turning down the amp. So let's go ahead and double tap on the output, and we're going to look at the output volume here and determine how loud we should be. Okay, not too bad. We're shooting about 75% up, but I prefer to be a little closer to the 0 mark. So what we're going to do is let's use our encoder here. We're going to push the button, and then we're going to bring this up about 6 dB and see where we're at. Okay, let's push it up a little bit more. Maybe about 8 dB. So that's a pretty good range for your output. If you start using boost pedals and other effects that just gradually bring the volume up when you engage them, then you want a little bit of headroom in your rig, so that way you don't get into the yellow and then into the red and start distorting your signal. So it's just not good for anybody. But in this case, the rig volume at 8 dB is perfectly fine. If I were to bring the amp up even more than what it already is, I probably have to turn down the rig volume, but that's just something that you kind of have to balance out yourself depending on what you're trying to do, okay? Now let's go ahead and look at the input section here. We do have an input gain and a threshold, a gate release, a noise filter, and a USB in volume, which we don't have to worry about right now because we're not actually recording with the MX5. So we're going to go back an arrow here, and let's see what happens if we bring down our input gain. Now what I'm seeing here is I'm not actually changing the gain that's coming into the MX5. It's almost like a separate fader that we're riding the volume of either up or down depending on what we're doing. So if we bring the input gain fader down, we're essentially sending less signal to the input of the amp and therefore just making a really clean sound. And let's go the opposite effect here, and let's crank it up all the way to 12 dB. So now you've heard that we have overdriven the amp just by pushing more volume into the input. So that's a good example there. Let's go back to 0. And the threshold is something that you want to look into when you start holding out your chords and holding out your notes in a solo. So for example, if I bring the gate threshold really high, it's not going to take long before my signal starts cutting out. So what we want to do is bring it down into the 90 to 80 range. So that way the bulk of our signal is well above the gate threshold, and we don't have to worry about our signal dropping out when we hold out a chord. And something that I usually like doing, even if I'm playing on a clean tone, is bringing up the noise filter. And you can keep it around 100, maybe 90, depending on how much gain you have on the amp. And this just helps clean up the noise floor, so you don't have a lot of extra noise when you're not playing. Alright guys, so that is the basics of the input and output blocks. And just to recap, you do want to make sure you get the tone that you want before adjusting the rig output. So that way you're getting the sound that you're striving for. And then just think of the rig volume as a master fader, either bringing it up or down. So if you're liking this series so far, be sure to leave me a comment down below. I love to read your thoughts and suggestions. And if you don't mind, go ahead, subscribe and click the bell. And if you want to help support the channel even further, you can check out my website where you can buy some courses, or you can click through my Sweetwater or Amazon links and buy your next piece of gear for your studio or your band. So once again, I'm Dr. Mcfarland. Thanks guys for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Keep rocking.